So once again, I want to welcome everybody to Creating Electronic Greeting Cards with WPF and XAML Browser Application Technology. Very pleased to introduce to you Cal Scrotenboer. He's an adjunct professor with Foothill College. Cal, thanks so much for being with us. You now have the floor.
Thank you, John. Welcome, everyone. So this is the agenda of what we're going to be covering in today's webcast. So let's start right in on that. To build a greeting card, if you go to the grocery store and look at the samples on the shelves there, you'll see that most traditional greeting cards have the same basic structure. There's a front page which has, in effect, a very casual setup, sort of unsuspecting text. And then when you open up the card, you get the surprise. Now, since paper greeting cards, with the exception of some of the more complex and very expensive ones, they simply open up to display the punchline. In the context of a software-based greeting card, the mechanism to switch from page 1 to page 2, or let's say scene 1 to scene 2, is some type of transition effect. Now, if you look at the e-cards that are available online, these obviously, because of the technology that's being used, are not limited to simply 2 pages, but can consist of some continuous animation with 1 or more scenes. So it can include, in effect, more than 2 pages or fewer than 2 pages, obviously a minimum of 1. And most of these e-cards include some type of audio, frequently music, but also some spoken text. Almost all the e-cards that are available today have been built using Flash technology. And since Microsoft is in the process of developing a new technology which is similar to Flash called Silverlight, in the future you can expect to see a lot of Silverlight e-cards. And if you want to find some good ideas on e-cards, here's some links that you can use. And there are samples which you can send to your friends. Some of them for free and some of them are subscription-based. Now, to actually design a page, if we're going to design the first page, we start out by selecting the text that we want to place into our greeting card. And again, usually to get some good ideas, since there's been millions of greeting cards made over the past, let's say, century. At the grocery store or drugstore, you can find plenty of good samples. And once you've chosen what you want to say, then the next issue is how to lay this out in a WPF window. Since a text-only greeting card would probably be relatively boring, you almost certainly would want to add some type of graphic to liven up your design. And fortunately today there's plenty of sources available for graphics, lots and lots of clip art, much of it free, typically available online or in these collections. The collections are now bargain basement priced as well. Or if you want to have some specialized graphical artwork, you can create some yourself. And the new Expression suite includes a graphic designer, Expression Graphic Designer, which can be used to create artwork which could be used in a WPF project. Now, if the art's not already in Xaml form, which is certainly what it would not be if it were created by something other than Expression Graphic Designer, then the way to convert it into XAML is to use the Adobe Illustrator XAML export plugin from Mike Swanson of Microsoft. And we'll be looking at that in just a couple minutes. But this, so any form of artwork can ultimately be converted into a artwork that can be positioned into Adobe Illustrator, and then using the exporter you can convert into XAML so that you can use it in your WPF greeting card. Now, another thing that you might do to add some interest to your design is to use WPF support for rich media, including things like bitmap images or videos and audio. So we're going to build a couple of samples, one of which is going to involve video, and then I'm going to show you a sample that was built by a friend of mine, and his uses some audio. And then the last thing that's important in terms of building our design is using the animation capability of WPF, in part for transitions and also for animating some actions in the scenes themselves. So that brings us to our first demo. And what the demo is going to show you is how to do a conversion of a Adobe Illustrator image into Xaml. So here I have Adobe Illustrator, and this is some artwork. Actually, the balloons were some CorelDRAW artwork, and then I simply typed in the Celebrate, frankly using CorelDRAW, since I'm a little bit more experienced with that than with Illustrator. And then I converted it into a .ai format. And from here, we can convert this into a XAML by simply going like this. I'm going to save the file into this particular location. And I need to select the XAML exporter. So this is it, Windows Presentation Foundation XAML. And I think I want to just call this Converted Balloons, Celebrate Balloons, excuse me. So hit the Enter key there, and that should save it. Now, it opened up automatically here in my text editor. So here you can see the XAML representation of the image that we were just looking at. And as you can see, XAML is relatively verbose, so that particular image is about 25,000 lines of XAML. All right, I'm going to close this out, and we'll actually be using this image that we just created later on in our process. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to show you is that in terms of creating the transitions to go from page 1 to page 2 or from scene 1 to scene 2, and if you have multiple scenes from scene 2 to scene 3, you're going to want to use some type of transition. And of course, transitions are typically built using animations. And this is a wonderful collection of animations that has been made available by Kevin Moore of Microsoft, and you can see the URL shown on the slide. This link that's shown here is for the May version, and there's an earlier version, I think, from January. And Kevin warns that this is a work in progress, so it's a good idea to check for updates to see if there's a later version even than this one. And you can use his library to add his transition effects directly into your application, or you can modify them, and certainly you can use what he's written as a technique for understanding how transitions are affected, and if you decide that you want to build something that's beyond the list that he has available. All right, so let's take a look at his collection of animations. And I have this running. So what you see here is this is his user interface. And what's important for us is here's a list of the various transitions that are available. So we're going to review some of these. And up here we have a list box. And in the list box, watch the standard transition, which I'll select base here. The standard transition, I'm going to switch from this aqua color to this beige, or what's called bisque color. Typically when you select a new entry, it just automatically pops the new vision in place. But of course, there are some more exciting transitions that can be affected. So let's take a look at star. And then let's look at rotate, wipe. And I'm only going to show a selected number of these in light of the time constraints of our webcast. So this is the rotate wipe. And then diamonds. And we'll show you the checkerboard. The 3D flip. 3D rotate. I showed these animations to my class last night, and we sort of voted on which were the most interesting ones. And this was an all-time favorite. Most of you probably have already seen this, the page turn effect. And then a new one that I hadn't seen before in Kevin's bag of tricks, the cloth or curtain effect. So that one's kind of neat. All right, so let's take a brief look at what he provides you. It's the full source code for his transitions. And here we have, for example, here's the storyboard for the melt transition. So if you simply examine the text for that, you can modify it as you see fit and incorporate his transitions into your application. So each one is labeled horizontal wipe, here's vertical wipe, diagonal wipe, and so forth. So it's a great way to learn about how to build your own transition and to understand how they work. Okay, so next we're about to jump into building our own greeting card. So let's talk about the tools that would be used for this. As with almost every WPF project, you're going to have to use either Visual Studio or Expression Blend, or even more likely, you're going to be using both of them and frequently at the same time. And to the extent that animations are involved, it's absolutely mandatory that you use Expression Blend because there's not really any animation capability built into the current version of Visual Studio. And to the extent that you need any code behind, that has to be done in Visual Studio. So most likely you're going to need to use both of the tools. And the first decision that you have to make in terms of creating a greeting card is to choose the project type. And the principal consideration which will determine which project type that you choose for your particular project is the deployment mechanism. Now, this webcast will include a discussion of deployment mechanisms, but not until the very end. So for purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to select the Xaml browser application as the project type for our greeting card which we're about to build. So I'm going to go here to my desktop, and I'm going to close out Kevin's application since we don't need that anymore. And then I've opened up a copy of Visual Studio to start our project. And we're going to create a new project. And if you have properly installed the WPF and WCF extensions to Visual Studio 2005, then you should have this .NET Framework 3.0 node in your list of project types. And then over here we need to select the XAML browser application type. And I'm going to call this the Baghdad Birthday Webcast version. That just helps me identify which version I'm working with. Now, the reason I'm using Visual Studio to create this project is that Visual Studio, in the case of an XBAP project, sets the appropriate project properties so that the application will deploy satisfactorily. And in theory, you could do this at the end. You could convert a standard WPF Windows application into an XBAP application, but it's a major nuisance. So, and the easiest way to get these settings set correctly is to simply select the correct project type in Visual Studio, as I've just done here. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to add some resources to our project. I could, in fact, do this in Expression Blend, but I'm going to do it here. There's no special reason for doing it here. I'm just going to do it before we switch over to Blend. All right, so I created a folder called Resources, and I'm going to add to that folder some existing items. And those items that we want are here in this folder called Resources, which I collected in advance. And there's 3 items that we're going to add to our Resources folder. The first is a custom font. This happens to be the Brush Script font, which I want to use for the font for my greeting card. And then here's the Xaml file that we created for the vector graphics. And then finally we've got a video. All right, so I'm going to click Add. Oh, I think that I only had the last one selected, so I want to add the other 2 items. I should have had all of them selected. And here we go, Add. There we go. So now we have all 3 of these resources added to our project. All right, and one other thing that I'd like to do is to add just a size to the page. Now, notice, by the way, that I have even disabled the designer here, and that I've associated XAML with the XML editor. This gives a little faster response when I'm working with Visual Studio, and I want to add in some explicit values for the height and width of my page. All right, so to make sure that all these changes have been saved, I'm going to build the project. And that's all that we really need Visual Studio for, so I'm going to close out Visual Studio. And now we're going to switch over to Blend. Oh, and I also want to close this out because we no longer need this, but we're going to be using this graphic in our greeting card. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to locate our project. So here, Baghdad Birthday Webcast, and we dig down one more level until we get to the project file. And we want to open up the project file with Expression Blend. So if we go to the Project tab here, we can see that in our Resources folder we have those 3 files that I mentioned, the font, the graphic design, and the video. All right, so let's turn to our page. And you can see that, well, actually I'm in the animation workspace. Let's move over to the design workspace, which places the these panels on, docks them on the left-hand side. And I think it's probably a good idea if I reduce the size of the workspace. So let's make this 75%. That's probably a little better. Gives me a little more space available for viewing the design here. All right, so the first thing I want to do is to add a background color to our greeting card. And I'm going to use the grid for that. So when I select properties for the grid, I can select the background property. So I'll click here, and then I'm going to use a solid color brush. And I'd like to make the background color something in the yellow range, so approximately there. And that's pretty close to the color that I want, but of course in preparing for this I got the exact color that I wanted, so I'm just going to steal that. So rather than just keeping adjusting this until I get to exactly where I want, I'll just paste in the pre-selected value, which was pretty close to what I just showed you. And it's a fairly light colored yellow, which actually reminds me of the color of my 1965 Corvette, which I had back in college. All right, so having added the background color, the next thing I'd like to do is to add the graphic to the page. So if we go back to our project tab, and I double-click on the entry here for the Celebrate balloons, that's going to open this up here in the designer, and I'm going to marquee select. And then I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, then switch back over to our page, and I'm going to paste that into the page. Okay, so now we have our graphic on the page. I'm going to retract the tools. And to my way of thinking, the size of the graphic by comparison to the size of the greeting card is a little bit too large. So I'd like to shrink the size of the graphic, and the easiest way to do that is to add a view box, because view boxes have been built to allow for scaling of images. And the easiest way to add a view box is to simply type it in. You could use the graphic designer, but it's a little tricky, and it's much easier to do it this way. Okay, and I've also added a canvas because you'll see in a moment what the purpose of that is. Now I'm going to, we have to obviously place this around our item that we want to scale. So I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom of the application and paste this in after the canvas, which represents our graphic. So now we have the graphic surrounded by a view box. And the graphic, you see, canvases can be nested almost infinitely. So let's build and run this. First, let's build it. Make sure that everything is functioning satisfactorily. Okay, I believe that worked. And it says build started. It hasn't finished yet. Okay, so now let's run this. Now, anybody anticipate what's going to happen here? Because there we have. There's our greeting card, but what happened to our graphic? Well, it's not present because a rule as to how view boxes work is that a view box must have, for its initially contained element, a fixed size. Doesn't really matter too much what the size is, it just has to have some size in order that it has a starting size and then a calculated scaled size. And without the starting size, it can never get to the scaled size, so it doesn't display anything. So now that I've added in this manually specified height and width, let's see if it displays correctly this time. And fortunately, that works the way it's supposed to. Okay, so now what I want to do is to return to the designer. And the purpose of adding that view box was to allow us to position and scale our graphics. So let's move this down a little bit like this. And I don't want to go too far because I want to start to scale it. All right, so I'm going to grab the corner here and shrink the size of my image down to something that I think is proportionate to what I'd like to see here. I think about like that looks fine. All right, then I'll move this down into the corner, position it right about right, so right about there looks fine. Okay, that nicely places the graphic at the size and position that I'd like it to be. All right, the next thing that I would like to do is to add 3 text blocks. So we're going to put them up here. It's going to be where our text will appear in our greeting card. And to do that, we go to our asset library to select the text block element. And since it's one of the lesser elements, so to speak, you have to select the Show All, and then scroll over to the text block area. And then we'll start to draw these out onto the design surface. So something that's probably satisfactory. So I'll create 3 of them. Okay, there we are. All right, now I need to get my tools back. And with the each of these text blocks selected, I'm going to go to the Properties tab, and I'm going to give them each a name. And I'm going to put some text in here just so that we can identify them separately. And then using the pointer, select the center text block. And give it the name. And then select the upper. And give it a name of upper. Okay, great. So all 3 of these have been named and positioned. Now what I want to do is to create a style. And with one of these text blocks selected, which is, you can see it's selected here and you can see it's selected over here. Oh, this is very subtle. I have great difficulty following the selection appearance over here. But we then go up to the Object menu and select Edit Style, Create Empty. And this will give us the dialog box for creating a style. And you can do a style a number of different ways. One is to give the style a name, which is what you see if we select this particular radio button. And if you refer to a style by name, then any element which wants to use that style has to explicitly reference that name. The other way to do this is to select Apply to All, in which case the style becomes a strongly typed style, and it will apply to all of the elements with which it is associated. And that's why I said it was important to have the text block selected prior to creating the style resource, because now that it says apply to all, well, it doesn't state it explicitly here, and we'll see it in the Xaml. It's going to apply to all text blocks. And there's a number of places where the style can be saved. It's, let's say, the scope of its availability is determined by its location. And it's quite convenient for us to store this at the page level because each of the text blocks that we want it to apply to are children, or effectively sub-children of the page. So I'm going to click OK here, and that will create our new style. So far it doesn't have any real content, but that's what we are going to add now. And there's 2 things that I want to add to the style. The first is I want to change the font size to 44. And the second is I want to specify the font family that we're going to use for our font. So to do that, I'm going to select Custom Expression, because in an XBAP application, you must include all of the elements that you want to deliver to your viewer. So we have to send the font along with the XBAP if we are not sure that the viewer is going to have this particular font on his computer. So there are certain fonts that you can be guaranteed that will be present on your recipient's computer. For example, Times New Roman, Arial, Comic Sans, etc. But for anything else where you're even marginally concerned, you should provide the font with your application. So we're going to reference this as a relative path. So resource / £, and then we need the exact name of the font, not the name of the font file, but the name of the font itself. And sometimes it's a little tricky to find this out. There are certain tools which give you that information. So I happen to know that this is the correct name, and that's what we'll add for that. Now I'm going to exit the style editor by clicking here. And then I want to take a look at the style that we've created by switching over to the Xaml. And here's the style. It's part of. It's been positioned in the page resources, and you notice that it's typed to a text block. So every text block which is in the scope of this page will get this particular style. And then we set the font size to 44, and we set the font family to brush script located in our resource folder. And then with a font, you need this pound sign to identify that this is a font. All right, so let's go back to Design View. And here you notice that the font size feature has taken effect, but the font family has not. I'm not quite sure why that is, but when we run it, we should see that it does take effect in the deployed application. Ooh, it does not. So perhaps I have an error in my reference to the font. Let's see if we can fix that. So let's go here to Properties, some resources. Oh, I need an S here in my text. I think that should do it. My fingers are crossed, and there we are. Okay, so that achieved what we want. And I noticed that the lower is a little bit further away from the middle than the upper. Not much, probably not necessarily worth fixing, but let's go here. And I can move this up by just a smidgen like that. All right, now to this stage, let's remove the text here, upper, middle, and lower, because I no longer need that. So I'll delete that, select this. Delete it again. Select this. Delete that. Okay, so now I have the 3 text blocks, and we've given them a font size and a font family. Now what I want to do is to animate the addition of text for use here. So to do that, I'm going to switch to the animation workspace. And what the animation workspace does is it moves these windows to dock on the bottom rather than to dock on the left side. And that's convenient when you create the timeline, because the timeline displays horizontally here. So, all right, so to create a new timeline, we click on this plus, and I'm going to call this timeline onload. All right, so that's displaying, and selecting the upper text block, I'm going to go to the Properties tab, and at the 0-second point, I want to give it a capital F, Enter. I have to hit Enter here because that's what's required to record the keyframe here. All right, and then I'm going to expand the, or zoom out on the, or zoom in, I guess, on my timeline, so that now I can move to the 1/10 of a second mark and add a second character. And then at the 2/10 of a second mark, I'll add a third character. At the 3/10 of a second mark, we'll add the space. At 4/10, YOU. All right, so that's good enough. Now, we could continue doing it like this, or here's another technique that could be used to continue here. I can copy and paste this, and then we have to change the numbers because that was at the 4/10 of a second. Now here's 5/10 of a second, 6, 7, 8, and then of course we need to expand this for your space YOU, YOUR, OUR space. Okay, so let's go back to the design window and see what that looks like. Okay, when you return to the design window from Xaml, the blend automatically retracts your timeline, in part because it's very easy to record things accidentally, which if you have to keep an eye on this thing where it says timeline recording is on, because any changes that you make to the property of any element will be recorded as part of your animation. All right, so let's take a look and see what our animation does. So it just types these out one character at a time, sort of the effect of a typewriter, or if you're typing into a text editor, it's the typing effect. All right, so we could either manually enter the additional characters here into the timeline, or we could use the technique which I just showed you to copy and paste and mark up. But the easiest mechanism of all is to simply take the animation that I previously did and copy it lock, stock, and barrel into our application, just like that. Okay, so now we have a full animation. So let's build and run this after we return to the design view. So let's see what the animation looks like. It's going to type out all of the text that I've entered one character at a time, 3 lines of text. Now, notice how somehow by the time that the page had fully loaded, some of the text had already started to display. So I'd like to put in a bit of a delay. Now this is the final result of page 1. So it's got our text and it's got our graphic and a solid background. But when this came on the screen, part of it had already displayed. So I want to put in a little delay feature. And we do that by going to the Xaml here. And for each of these animations, I'm going to use a begin time of 3 seconds. So that says basically pause for 3 seconds before you start this animation. So I have 3 text blocks, and each text block is animated separately. So each one needs the delay. All right, so let's run that. This time the card should display with just the graphic momentarily, and then the animation should commence. Okay, so that's the way I wanted it. So for just a moment, the screen is blank, and then the text animates out. All right, so this represents the final product for page 1, so to speak, of our greeting card. And the next thing we want to do is to add in the punchline, which is going to take the form of a video. So I'm going to go over to the design view. And I'm going to get rid of the tools. And then the item that we need for this is the media player. And that's also one of the elements that requires the Show All tab to be selected. It's very difficult working in this low resolution. And I want my media player to be somewhat larger than the window. The reason for that is that this video, which obviously I got from some newscasts on television, it has some additional stuff that I'd like to display off screen, not as part of the card itself. So the easiest way to do that is to just make the player larger than the card so that it displays here. All right, so we have to associate the player with some video. And the way to do that is, having selected the player here, we go to the media area here, and we select a property here for source. And I need to select the correct one, which is, it has to be part of our project itself. Okay, so we have to select the, many versions of this on my computer here, but this is the correct one, should be the correct one. All right, now what I've done here, I've hard-coded it to the path that it's contained in this particular project. And that's completely unsatisfactory for an XBAP deployment. So what needs to be done is that I would need to repath it so that it goes to the relative pathing using the resources folder. So remember what I did with respect to the font. So we say resources / and then this. I won't do this for purposes of this demonstration because we're not really deploying it, but I'm just pointing out that what I did was completely unsatisfactory vis-a-vis. Well, it's not. It's unsatisfactory. I'd leave it that way. To fix it would take just a moment, but it's not necessary for purposes of how this demonstration will work. All right, so now I've linked in the video. So let's go ahead and play that and see how that works. All right, so it's displaying our video even before the text display. So it's displaying the video directly on top of the text. So I see two problems there. One is that it's playing the video much too soon. We don't want the video to begin until after the text has finished displaying. And secondly, we don't want it to display on top of the text. We want it to display below the text. So what we really want to do is to move some of these elements to a different position. So the easiest way to do that is to switch to the Xaml view and go to the end of the code. And notice here that Blend has placed these elements down at the very bottom of our Xaml, and I'm going to move them to the top. Not quite to the top. I want it to be after the resources, but it's going to be to the top of the elements contained in the grid. All right, and I also want my media element to be displayed above, well, actually below, so above here in the XAML, but below on the layers on the greeting card. So the media element is displayed below the three text blocks, and also below that graphic. All right. The other thing that we need to accomplish is to not have the video begin to play as soon as the application launches. So switching back to design mode. I'm going to select the media element, and in the Properties tab, I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to go to this media zone, and down here, you notice that the loaded behavior specifies that it's going to play. So instead of playing, I want it to pause. And also, I want to set its opacity level so it starts out with an opacity of 0. So when it launches, you won't see it at all, and it won't play until we tell it to play. All right, to specify when we want it to play, I'm going to do that by creating a second timeline. And the second timeline I'm going to call on text automation complete. All right, so you notice how my name corresponds to like when I want this second storyboard to run. Okay, so here's my timeline for the animation of the media player. All right, so with the media element selected, I'm going to set a couple settings. The first is I want it at that point in time to play. And I also want to change the opacity setting so that when it starts to play, I want the opacity setting to go to 25%. And then at 1 second later, I want it to go to 50%. A second after that, I'd like it to go to 75%. And finally, at a second after that, I'll set it to 100%. So over a period of 3 seconds, it's going to go from completely opaque up to completely transparent to completely visible. All right, so let's take a look at the Xaml that's created for us for the timeline. Okay, so it's created a couple of animations. It's a separate animation to animate the status from pause to play, and then a second animation which animates the opacity property going from its start position of 0 up to a value of 100% over a period of 3 seconds. Now, we don't want this to start to play until after the text animation has completed. And the text animation itself takes a total of 10.4 seconds, and you recall that we put in a 3-second delay, so the text animation does not actually finish until 13.4 seconds. So what I want to do is to start the opacity changing after, let's say, approximately 14 seconds. All right, and normally I would also set this to 14 seconds, but there's some sort of glitch with the way the video works on my system here, so I've added a little sort of a leader onto the for the video, and I'm going to set this to 8 seconds, which means that it's going to actually be playing for 6 seconds before it becomes visible, and hopefully that gets sort of beyond that glitch issue. All right, so setting that, let's build and run that. Okay, so there comes the text. And now it fades out, and there comes our scene behind it. But you notice that the text is still visible. So there's one more thing that I'd like to do to improve this design, and that is to go back to the original storyboard, the onload storyboard for our text animation. And at the very end, with all 3 of the text blocks selected, All right, I need to select all three text blocks, and then I'm going to switch to the property tab for the text block. A little response issue here. And maybe the best thing is to switch over into Xaml again. There we go. Okay, so I do want to be back in the design mode, so let's go back to there. And I'm in the onload, and I need to select all three of the text blocks. Go here to the 11-second mark, and at that point I'm going to start reducing the opacity of my text block. So first I'll go to 75%, and then at the 12-second mark we'll change that down to 50%, and at the 13-second mark we'll set it to 25%, and then finally at the 14-second mark we'll set it down to 0. So that way our text will fade out. And going back here to the XAML, if we look at the animation that we've just created, which are here, we need to add in the 3-second delay on these as well. Otherwise, they will start to fade out the text even before it's finished being entered. So with that in place, I think we should have effectively the final result. Okay, so here comes our greeting card. This would be the what your customer or friend would see. For your birthday, we've gathered together a few of your best friends for a little celebration in your honor. As they say with friends like that, well, it goes on for a ways, but it's essentially the same, more of the same coming up. Okay, so let's switch back to that completes the that's the complete greeting card there. So let's go back to our slide. Oh, I'm sorry. The next, whoops. I also want to show you a second greeting card. This one was written by a friend of mine, Alan Cobb. And let's run this one. Oh, I have to turn on the speaker for this because he's got some animation effects. So I'm going to launch his greeting card. This is a baby announcement.
We've got a new baby girl. Take a look. Wait a minute. Keep going. Hey, girl.
Okay, so what Alan has done here with his card is he's created, in effect, 3 scenes with 2 transitions. Now, notice that this button, which is animated for the mouse over effect, that's actually a button, and using control templates, he has changed the appearance of the button so that it looks like a baby bottle. And the graphic for the baby bottle, Alan created using Expression Graphic Designer, so it's a custom-built graphic. All right, so I'm going to run this one more time. So notice how we had that animation where the page flipped out at us, the rotation on the newspaper, the mouse over animation here, then using another animation to display the second image, and then finally the curtain or cloth animation transition, which you saw from Kevin's bag of tricks. And this photograph happens to be the daughter of some friends of mine from the Netherlands. Okay, I'm going to close this out, and then looking in Alan's application, notice that he uses the Kevin Moore's bag of tricks. Transitions are just a library that's been added to his application, which allows him then to use these transitions as part of his project. All right, let me close that out. Turn off my speaker. Hope that was audible to you. Okay, so that brings us to the last part of this presentation, which is to look at the deployment options. And in a WPF, for a WPF greeting card, you essentially would have three options that you could consider. But in every instance, there are some deployment prerequisites. The first being that WPF will only work on Windows XP, and that's even if you have SP2 installed, or with the Windows Vista operating system. Now, technically, it also will work with Windows Server 2003, but not too many greeting card customers are likely to be using that for their regular operating system. And in every instance, you need .NET Framework 3.0, which comes pre-installed with Windows Vista, but which is a separate download and install for XP. So that's a bit of a barrier to usage at some stage, but as more and more people switch over to Vista, it becomes less and less of a problem. And of course, over time, more and more people will have this installed by some process or another. Then amongst the three project types, one option is the WPF Windows application. And the advantage of that would be that you could send your application to someone as an email attachment or possibly on a CD. And the CD could be useful if the card involves a significant amount of data, for example, a relatively long-running video. So you could send a video that has, a baby announcement, like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, of the baby's actions, or in case of a soldier on deployment, it could include some extensive video. But the disadvantage of the Windows application project type is that it does require installation on the recipient's computer as an actual application. And of course, that could be a problem in any type of high security environment where the user may not possess installation permissions. I mean, obviously, to install an application, you generally need administrative privileges, and not everyone is able to run in administrator mode. And in some instances, the recipient doesn't even own the computer that he wants to view the greeting card on. So, for example, if the recipient is at the computer lab at school, or in an internet cafe, or at the Admiral's Club at the airport or something, that's not a practical solution. All right, so the second option is the XBAP application, and that's what Alan and I used in the examples that we have displayed today. An XBAP application actually is a Windows application, but it's delivered via the internet. So you simply send the URL to your customer, typically by an email or some type of link, a web link. And then when the user clicks on that, the browser will download the XBAP application and download it to cache and then run it on the user's computer. It has to run in Internet Explorer. That's Internet Explorer 6 or Internet Explorer 7. And it runs in the Internet Explorer Security Sandbox, which is a real convenience because it does reduce the security risks to the reader. And the reader does not have to be running in administrative mode. So it's much easier. Now, as I mentioned earlier, While you could switch after building the application as a Windows application, you could switch over to making it an XBAP, but that's really not a good idea because it's a major hassle to do that. And then the last potential deployment option is Silverlight. But my personal opinion at this stage, which is June 2007, is that Silverlight at this point is not yet practical for creating a WPF greeting card. And the principal reason for that is that Silverlight is still in beta, if you're talking the JavaScript version, or it's in alpha if you're talking about the C# version, which of course is the more appealing one. And the tools for building applications in Silverlight are still relatively immature. Some of my friends who've been working on Silverlight projects have expressed some difficulties in doing it. But of course, things are underway to improve that. And in the near to medium term future, you can expect that it will move from alpha to beta and eventually to release candidate and finally to full release. And the tools almost certainly will improve with also a very rapid pace. But as of this point, it's still very immature. And then the last thing is there is obviously some significant limitations in the design of Silverlight. It doesn't support most WPF controls beyond the canvas, but well, most E-cards are written in Flash today, and Silverlight is the Microsoft competitive technology for Flash. So I think in the future you're going to see that a significant percentage of that market will be captured by Silverlight. And the big promise for Silverlight is that it's lightweight. It doesn't require any installation. It requires just a very small plug-in. Microsoft is obviously hoping that the distribution of the plug-in will get to the same point roughly as Flash. And at that stage, you're probably going to see a lot of Silverlight greeting cards. And that concludes my presentation for today. Just a reference now for some additional resources. I have a blog, a WPF blog at wpflearningexperience.com. And we teach at Foothill College WPF and several different classes in C#. We have possibly the world's only college-level expression blend class, which starts on July 2nd. You can see that that's only about 10 days away. These classes are offered both in a face-to-face mode and in an online mode, so that people can take them from any place. For residents of California, the cost of the classes is under $100. It's very inexpensive. The WPF class is now finishing up its second cycle and will be starting the third cycle, also starting on July 2nd. So I'm welcoming everyone to join us. I've also got on here my email address and Alan's email address in case you'd like to contact him about the greeting card that you saw that he built. I have a copy of his greeting card available on my blog at wpflearningexperience.com. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to John, and then I'll be taking questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Cal. Excellent presentation. Very cool. Before we go to the question, by the way, great time if you're going to submit questions. We're finally going to do the questions now, so now's a good time to submit them, and we'll be going right back to Cal in just 1 second to do that. I do want to remind everybody we're going to put an evaluation up on the screen before we go to questions, and I don't know if I mentioned at the top, but the results we get back are very important to us, and they're very important to Cal in terms of being able to refine the content of these webcasts that we bring to you. So if you could kindly take a moment and fill that out when it comes up, we would really appreciate it. And just want to let everybody know that we're offering a promotion right now, whereas if you fill out and submit the evaluation, your name is automatically thrown into the hat for the possibility to win a Microsoft Zune digital media player. So possibility of a great benefit for you as well if you fill out and submit that evaluation. So to remind everybody for upcoming and previously live webcasts, www.microsoft.com/webcasts. Our entire catalog of webcast content is available at that location, including if you would like to see these demos that Cal did today, they will be available at that location within 24 hours. up now. So sometime tomorrow, sometime around midday tomorrow, you should be able to get that. Midday on the West Coast, I should say. If you have webcast content ideas, if there's something you would like to see that we have not already brought, please let us know about it. We're always looking for great ideas, and we have developed quite a few webcasts based on some excellent ideas and recommendations submitted to us by webcast attendees. That's a pretty long URL there. You can go to the File menu and select Print the PDF, and that'll give you a reference back to, it'll give you a local copy of the slide deck in PDF format, which will give you a reference back to this URL, plus the many URLs that Cal pushed out during the webcast today. Last of all, today's webcast was presented using Microsoft Office Live Meeting. This is a great collaboration tool. If you work, especially if you work with a remote office or with remote employees, it's a really easy way to get people together for a meeting. So if you'd like to give that a try, Microsoft Live Meeting is offering a 14-day free trial, which can be accessed at www.microsoft.com/presentlive. So without further ado, I'm going to put up the evaluation launch page. So there's two central links on this page, and you can actually click on this page. This is a live web page that I've loaded into your browser. The registered online link will open the evaluation in your live meeting interface, about half pre-populated with information that you gave us when you registered for this webcast. If you prefer to start with a completely blank evaluation, you can go ahead and click the All Other Registrants link, and that'll open it up with nothing pre-populated. All right, Cal, I'm done. Do you want to go through those questions?
Yes, there's not too many questions here, but let me see what I can do with them. The first question says, can we get only the Xaml editor for download? I'm not quite sure what that refers to. A couple things I guess I can comment here. The expression blend tool, perhaps that's what he's referring to, that's available from Microsoft as a commercial product. The list price of the expression blend suite is $5.99. The suite consists of 4 products, the most important of which appears to be blend, because the retail price of blend by itself is $4.99. So 5/6 of the price of the suite is blend, and then the additional 3 components are Expression Web Designer, which is Microsoft's successor to Front Page and competition for Dreamweaver. Microsoft Expression Graphic Designer, which is in effect Microsoft's competition for Adobe Illustrator and CorelDRAW. And then the last one is Expression Media, which is apparently similar to Adobe Bridge, and which also, I believe that the media encoder is part of the suite. I'm a little fuzzy on that, but the media encoder is what you use to edit your video for purposes of using it in the Silverlight context. I used it for working on my Iraq video for this particular presentation. Now, another thing that this question might relate to is I mentioned that in Visual Studio I had disabled the CIDR designer and had simply associated the XAML file extension with the XML editor. And that's the XML editor that's built into Visual Studio, so you don't have to download anything to get that. That's just in effect changing a property setting. And I really did it just in order to speed up the process. The XML editor is much faster than the CIDR editor. And the CIDR designer really isn't very practical. Because of how much superior the blend designer is, you really wouldn't want to use the CIDR designer in very many situations if you have blend available to you. Okay, so next question. And if I check that to get rid of it. Okay. Well, I'm not going to mark it. I'm not worried about it. All right. So the next question says, are those extra transitions available for download? I think the purpose of that question is to ask about where can you get the Kevin Moore's bag of tricks. And in my slide set there, it included the link to those transitions. Now, the transitions that I created manually in the demonstration. And I explained how to create similar ones. They're not particularly profound, so that you could create your own to that effect. But the ones from Kevin Moore can be, you can download his library and then include his library in your project, just as Alan did, and then you can use all of his transitions as pre-built transitions for animations. So it's definitely available. It's completely free, and at some stage that it may be updated with even more or even better versions. All right, and then the next question, it says, can we open and edit Flash files in Expression Blend? Well, I don't know the answer to that directly, but my guess is that the answer is no. I'm not very familiar with how Flash is done, and I don't think that it's supported in Expression Blend. So that's the best I can answer on that. And that is the end of the current queue. If anybody wants to add any more questions, I'd be happy to address them, but that's all that's shown here at the moment.
Cal, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Cal Scrotenboer. Thank you, Cal. Really appreciate the presentation today. Excellent, excellent presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for logging in. This will, and I appreciate you hanging out. I think we went a little overtime, but that's great, and we were able to get everything in today. This will conclude the audio portion of the webcast. I do appreciate seeing you online at our webcast and hope to see you all online again soon. We will leave the evaluation up, and I'll remind everybody that if you do have any issues with submitting that eval, please turn your C code to red, and I will come on to a private chat with you and try to help you through that. But for now, that will conclude the audio portion of this webcast. Have a great day, everybody.